the main target of this meeting is to disseminate and improve interaction between similar type of projects in order to accelerate research and avoid overlapping. Some projects are ending and some are starting. Today, besides our NONTOX project, we'll hear the results of PLAST2bCLEANED and CREATOR projects, which also are ending. We'll hear also targets of Primus and INCREACE projects, which are starting. I'll summarize first briefly the target of NONTOX project. Later, we'll hear NONTOX main results, highlights on development of active hyperspectral sensor for bromine detection, treatment processes for target toxic feedstocks, and highlights of demonstrators and LCA. And after the all presentations, we will have a round table on dissemination. So let's disseminate with all consortiums to move together towards safe processing of toxic wastes. And next slide, and then actually next slide, because actually I told about this. Yes, this one, thank you. Okay. So the NONTOX project started 2019 and is ending this year. The project relates to EU program on methods to remove hazardous substances and contaminants from secondary raw materials. Partners include 5 research institutes, 4 recyclers, 2 universities, and 1 product responsibility organization. Next one, please. Yeah. NONTOX project aims to increase the recycling rates of hazardous plastic waste originating from 3 significant waste streams: waste electrical and electronics equipment, end-of-life vehicles, and construction and demolition waste. As we all know, hazardous substances like legacy additives and flame retardants make recycling not possible, increasing amount of plastics to be incinerated or landfilled. We all aim to solve this challenge. Next one, please. The NONTOX concept includes intelligent sorting using a specific sensor, physical and mechanical recycling, pyrolysis to treat the most difficult residues, and upgrading technologies to impart virgin-like properties to recycled plastics. Besides this, we do life cycle analysis and economic evaluations for the whole concept. So today we'll hear the highlights of the issues marked here by a star. Okay, and now we could go to the next slide to the agenda, and let's start the meeting. So first we have the presentation of Primus project. Please, Patsy.
Hello, good morning. I hope you can hear me well. Thanks very much to NONTOX Project for giving us the opportunity to present Primus to all the community. So thanks very much, Anja, and thanks very much, Julia. So I'll be sharing my screen now. Hopefully you can all see it properly. Yep. Okay, so Primus project is a project that just started this year. So we are only 6 months down the road. So, well, therefore, there's not many results to be shown. I will be talking mostly about the project itself. So my name is Patricia de Viteri. I work for Mondragon Corporation, and I am the communication and dissemination manager for NONTOX. For Primus. Okay, so we proposed and submitted this project to the European community, the European Commission, because we wanted to reduce the environmental impact of polymers and plastics. Nowadays, there's about 26 million tons of plastic waste generated yearly in the European Union, well, and growing rapidly. So this amount these days might be up to 28 million probably. Only 1/3 of all that plastic is collected for recycling. and much less is successfully recycled. And that's because a number of barriers and well, we have identified some of them, and we will be addressing them throughout the Primus project. And one of them will be the lack of standards, so the recycling companies can adopt. Also, some safety issues, in particular for those applications that want to get generate parts and components to be in contact with food because of the bromine flame retardants in legacy polymers and plastics. Also, the quality of the recycled polymers. Usually, recycling companies mix polymers and then make them very useless for creating new parts when we need to address particular technical specifications. And also the recycling rate. There's not much plastic being recycled for raw material these days. That makes that today, the demand of recycled plastic is about 6% of all the plastic needed in the EU. Maybe in the midterm, we can raise that to double to 12%, probably. So just to give you a quick idea of what Primus project is about, I'm going to show a short video that I hope can hear and get through. Sorry, no sound. Okay. So go again.
Today, plastics are everywhere. Just look around you and you will find that we are surrounded by products made out of plastic, like cars, home appliances, phones, toys, just to mention a few, apart from packaging. And it is a great material, but it creates 26 million tons of plastic waste every year in Europe, and less than a third is collected for recycling, and even less is actually recycled. Most of the recycled plastic today is used to create low-value products, such as traffic cones, trash bags, planters, cloths, outdoor furniture, cups, among others. This is mainly because there are many types of plastics in which occur varying qualities. They have different properties and compositions, and they need to be separated before recycling. If this is not done properly, the plastic mixture has unpredictable properties, making it unusable even for the simplest applications. Don't even think about high-tech components and precision parts. In the Primus project, funded by the European Union, we want to create high-tech products out of recycled plastic. But not any product. We want to create products that will meet all the technical and safety requirements, so that there is no difference between a recycled product from a product made from new plastic. Isn't it great? To start with, we want to create parts made from waste plastic for cars and home appliances. That's not all. We'll be boosting the plastic recycling industry in Europe, creating methods to control the recycled quality, connecting who collects the waste with who can process it and use it, improving regulations and providing recommendations, and creating a new wave of high-quality jobs for the plastic recycling industry, as well as making our world a little bit greener and with less plastic waste. To make this happen, 12 organizations from around Europe are working together to deliver the Primus mission, thanks to 7 million euros of funding from the European Union under the Horizon Europe program. Do you care about the environment? Do you want to learn more about plastic recycling and follow our work for the next 3 years? You can be part of our Primus community and help with the journey of plastics recycling by visiting www.primus-project.eu. Next time you want to buy a car or a home appliance, you may ask about the content of recycled plastics to help you make a wiser decision. Because recycling plastics is a great way to create a positive impact for the environment by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, dependency of virgin fossil resources, and plastic waste and litter. What I do creates a better future for us.
Okay, thanks very much for watching our video. Sorry. And okay, so for previous projects, the research areas that we will be developing are the standards and legislation for plastic recycling, the recycled sourcing and characterization, recycled polymer formulation and processing, production, test and validation, guarantee a good quality and secure supply chain. We'll be working on the assessment and validation of the life cycle environmental impacts, and also we'll address society and market uptake. So the first one, in terms of standards and legislation, we'll be acting in all phases of the life cycle of the recycled plastics, developing safety standards for recyclates, working on the sampling methodologies, moving towards the adoption of standards in the EU, and also working with the PRE 1000 voluntary regulation, which is an industry voluntary standard that allows companies, recycling companies, to generate safe and cost-effective polymers for second life. We'll also be working on the development of food contact recyclates, quantifying the non-intentionally added substances, and working on the assessment of risks and issue guidelines. In terms of the sourcing and characterization of the recycled plastics and polymers, obviously there's a need for a robust sampling methodology to know what is coming from the recycling process, researching how this is done, verifying in the laboratory the results, and also trying to understand what are the methods and processes the recyclers are using in the processes. We'll be studying determining the plastic aging and degradation of the polymer chains. During the processing of the recycled polymers, we'll be also characterizing the volatile organic components that appear, and we'll identify and propose debromination techniques for large-scale implementation. Now, all these will be tested, first formulating the polymer mixtures, and then tested for the production of parts and components. And we'll be targeting two sectors, that is automotive and home appliances, in 4 different pilots. In the first pilot, we are going to address the manufacturing of automotive interior and aesthetic parts made with recycled polycarbonate and ABS. We'll also be targeting the manufacturing automotive cooling circuits made of polypropylene, recycled polypropylene and EPDM. And then for home appliances, we will try to generate safe refrigerator liners for food contact made with high impact polystyrene, and also washing machine door seals made from recycled EPDM. Okay, now for the industry to uptake the use of recycled polymers, we need to guarantee a good quality and secure supply chain. There is, we need to certify the suppliers and the recycled polymers they supply, accessing public data with the origin of the plastic and the quality of it. Also perform life cycle analysis and sustainability assessments of the facilities of the recyclers, and generate tools, digital tools for traceability and product passport for the plastics with some sort of tamper-proof information systems, probably based on blockchain. Okay, so to assess and validate the impact throughout the life cycle of the recycling process, we'll be needing to demonstrate how much better it is to use recycled plastics in comparison to the use of new ones. So we'll be assessing and comparing for the 4 demo pilots the sustainability degree of using the recycled polymers or fresh virgin plastics. And also in terms of society and market, we need to answer some questions like, what does the market think about using recycled polymers for quality parts? How much of these recycled polymers we can actually sell to production companies? Will the OEMs and clients demand the parts made with recycled plastics? And if there's a real market opportunity for this. So that's in terms of industry. In terms of society, we need to target and identify, investigate what do citizens think about the using of recycled polymer parts in new products or new appliances or new cars, if they can make the difference, if they can value that, and if they will be accepting that change and the new way of things. Okay. So for doing this, there's a group of organizations from 6 different countries. From north to south, we have from Finland, Estonia, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Spain. And we have a nice mixture of universities, industry, technology centers, associations, and businesses, which are there, as you can see, from those different countries. If anyone wants to get in contact with any of the companies, can just channel the conversations and channel the communication. Okay, and then just a short note about the timeline and some of the milestones we expect in the projects. So we started on the 1st of May this year, so we are at the month 7 at the moment, and we expect to end in late April 2025. Okay, so at month 3, we have already finished the analysis of these feedstock samples for our pilot processes. By month 16, we intend to have the recyclates already ready for processing and for making the parts. By month 20, we expect to have ready the life cycle sustainability assessment methodology. By month 24, we'll have the validation of the PRE 1000 set of pre-standards. Month 27, we will have the determination methods for large scale already identified and configured. By month 33, we intend to have the minimum viable product for the digital product passports for the recycled polymer. And then by the end of the project, month 36, we'll have in the validation of the for pilots for these automotive parts and for the home appliances. And that will be all from my side. You can follow us through our webpage at Primus Project EU or through the LinkedIn channel. We are actually quite active there. So you can follow us and reach us there. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paxti. Do we have any questions? Okay, thank you again, and let's go to the increase project. Increase process. So, Jana, please, sorry about the pronunciation.
Hi, good morning. Really great to be here today, and thank you very much for this very interesting presentation of the Primus project. I already see quite some synergies with our new project Increase. I'll just start sharing my screen. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, so great. Do you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Gergana, and I'm coming from the Fraunhofer IZM Institute in Berlin, and I'm the coordinator of the Increase project that I will briefly introduce to you today. We started the Increase project in June 2022, basically this year, with a really nice productive kickoff meeting in Berlin in July. And the main objective of Increase is to enable an increased uptake of recycled plastics in really challenging applications where recycled plastics have not been used up to date. And we are enabling this through innovative and systematic solutions along the entire recycled plastics value chain. This is a very short or very complex, actually, overview of our journey and what we have in front of us for the next 4 years. So I will walk you through several elements of our project. I will briefly introduce who is involved in Increase, what are our objectives, how do we plan how do we plan to achieve our goals, and what are the expected outcomes. I would just also switch to laser pointer so that you can follow me easier. So, but I really would like also to mention that the journey this year actually started some years ago with our first Horizon 2020 project CLOSE-WE, where we collaborated also with Fraunhofer, IVV hosting the event today, and Philips. And the objective of CLOSE-WE was to produce high quality piano black, high gloss ABS out of mixed e-waste. And there we collaborated with recyclers, combined different sorting and recycling technologies in order to get those grades. Then in 2017, 3 years later, we continued with the police project, another Horizon 2020 initiative, where we had a consortium of 20 partners with an expertise covering the full value chain of plastics from electric and electronic equipment waste. And the ambition of the project was to continue with the challenges related to the use of recycled plastics. And for this, we looked at each single stage of the value chain and looked how can we optimize the phase so that we can have a higher quantity, higher yield, and better quality of recyclates that we use then in 9 demonstrators. So with each of these projects, we actually dive deeper into the realm of challenges related to plastics recycling, but also the reuse of recyclates in challenging applications. And this actually gave the idea also to continue with a deep dive in this new project, where we will look at 5 business cases. And basically, if we manage to walk our talk and achieve all the things that we have in mind, we will then also get to our highest purpose, which is then through combined efforts, have electronic products that are recyclable by design and contain recycled plastics, so that we can pave the way to an increased recycled content in challenging applications for a resilient and digitalized circular economy. So who is on board? In all these projects, we follow the same philosophy, that we have to have a value chain perspective, have multiple perspectives on the same table, so that we can also tackle those challenging problems or issues. The consortium of INCREACE consists of 70 partners covering the full value chain. So we have, of course, the academia partners, but also designers and manufacturers of electronic products, recyclers, consultants, the Italian EPR system Arion, a software developer here, Green Token by SAP, and consulting companies that are following our activities in multiple aspects. We have also 8 specific objectives that will also guide our way towards our highest purpose. So first, we would like to develop and standardize methods for the traceability of the recyclates back to their origin. And here we have 2 phases. We are looking at the traceability throughout the pre-processing of the plastics, but also in the different recycling technologies. Then our second objective is to improve the pre-processing of plastic waste and prevent hazardous substances entering in the system. And here we are going to look at different methodologies, inline and offline analysis, to have a better picture of what is the content of the plastics, and what are possible hazardous substances that are contained in the plastic waste stream. Our third objective focuses on increasing the recycling yield of mixed plastics and also better quality control of the recyclates. Our fourth objective, and this is also towards our highest purpose, is to pave the way for recyclable by design plastics. A little bit later, I will also show you a little bit more detail how we are achieving those goals. Our fifth objective is to characterize and demonstrate the suitability of the recyclates for the specific business cases that we have in the project. Then we continue with our sixth objective, which is to increase the engagement of the society as an active stakeholder in the transition towards the circular plastics transition. Our seventh objective focuses on providing a systemic framework, which will also look at the economic, regulatory, and environmental impacts of the different business cases and also the technologies that we have in the project. And finally, we have very effective dissemination, exploitation, and communication plans with which we will make sure that our project results reach also the respective stakeholders. So this is an overview of our concept and how we are aiming to tailor the project. So in the heart of the project are the five different business cases. And these five business cases are represented by manufacturers. So we have Vorwerk on board, which is going to look at the use of recyclates in food contact applications. We have SCASA on board, and they're going to look at the use of recyclates and simultaneously achieving the 94V0 flammability requirements. Further, we have SCASA as a partner. They're going to look at how can we achieve electrostatic discharge requirements using recyclates. Then Philips is having three different business cases, all coming from the medical applications field. We, I guess, all know how challenging this is. And finally, we have PAS on board. They're going to look at the use of recyclates in subcomponents of high-tech, of different electric and electronic equipment. And because all these five different business cases bring unique challenges and have totally different requirements towards the materials, first we need to look at the supply side. So how can we improve, what do we need to do in the pre-processing in order to help then recycling get to achieve those different material requirements. And for each business case, we are going to combine different recycling technologies. So what is unique about the project is that we are looking at the feasibility of mechanical recycling, the Fraunhofer IBV CreaSolv, so solvent-based recycling, and then Neste's chemical recycling technologies and their feasibility to produce the required grades for the five different business cases. And of course, we'll continue building up on our previous work in police. Some of you may have participated or have seen the guidelines that were developed in the police guidelines. They are strictly focusing on design for recycling and design from recycling, but the focus technology is mechanical recycling. So here we are continuing the work, but also looking at what it means to be recyclable. We have different recycling technologies, not only mechanical recycling. And also we are building a tool together with PESI Group that will support designers and manufacturers to evaluate in a very early stage, even at the ideation stage, their concept and to what extent their product is actually recyclable. We also have to look, of course, at the demand side. So how can we engage the society as an active participant in the circular economy? What strategies can we elaborate so that we can increase the demand for products containing recycled plastics? This is one major element of our work here. The second major element is to design the so-called divestment framework. So how can collection schemes be optimized so that they enable a behavior of people that takes them out of their hoarding behavior and stimulates them to bring their products back to collection and obviously to recycling. As I mentioned, we are applying on a blockchain solution along the pre-processing and also the recycling to be able to trace and to validate the materials, what is the origin of the materials, and also to be able to make claims about the recycled content in the final product. We are also looking at systemic framework. Basically, for each of the business cases, we will evaluate or analyze the specific regulatory framework. We'll perform a techno-economic assessment. And also for each business case, for each technology, we are also planning to do a life cycle analysis. And another great thing is that we have a very solid advisory board consisting of 16 organizations from manufacturer associations, recyclers associations, standardization bodies, other research institutes, machine builders, and European EPR systems. And we are planning to meet once in a year to present the progress of the project and also get their feedback and exchange on the results. A very central element of our work, and I've heard that the Primus project is also having a lot of activities in that respect, is standardization and policy making. So here we are planning to contribute to the standards that are currently being developed, but also revised by Sensenelec. And this is a standardization mandate that has been launched this year, but planned for a little while. But here we are looking at how recyclates are defined, how recyclates or recycled content is being calculated, also traceability, validation of recyclates. How can we make sure that the consistent quality is being kept? So all these things that are part of our research endeavors will be provided as a feedback loop to the current standardization activities. Here, just a very short overview of our innovation potential, the expected technology readiness level. So all business cases are starting by technology readiness level 3, but we hope to increase the technology readiness level depending on the business case towards technology readiness level 6 or 5, and we have one very challenging business case where the TIRA will be increased from 3 to 4. And here, brief overview of our outcomes. Some of the outcomes are have direct link to our objectives. So I would just mention a few of them. So we are planning to have a data-driven optimization of the sorting processes by applying inline and offline technologies, also to achieve higher traceability during the pre-processing of the plastics by applying blockchain technology. Then, as mentioned, the digital verification of the content of recyclates will be enabled through blockchain, and our aim here is to create trust in the industry in terms of content, but also recycled content. Then, as mentioned, we are going to combine different recycling technologies depending on the business case. And we would like to see a stronger uptake of solvent-based and chemical recycling as a complementary to mechanical recycling. Then we are developing the comprehensive set of and increased use of circular product design guidelines for the electronics industry. As I mentioned here, we would like to develop a tool that will be able to consult to designers and manufacturers to evaluate in an early stage the later impacts on the recycling their products have. Then our further outcomes include proof that the polymers can be recycled at quality levels and can push the current boundaries in new challenging applications. Then through an LCA, we aim to validate that we are reducing greenhouse emissions and that we contribute to raw material savings. As mentioned, a central aspect is the active engagement of the society as an active participant in the circular plastics transition through strategies for enhanced demand of products containing recycled plastics, but also motivating consumers to bring their old products back to recycling. And finally, we are performing LCA, so we hope to have a systemic integration and communication of environmental information so that claims can be made in a way more trustful way. And finally, we're looking at a systemic perspective. So here we are hoping to develop a model that will give us information about the dynamic structure of the plastics model, and also how can we trace or get materials that are currently not exploited and reintegrate them in the current plastic model so that we have more resources for additional applications. And very short overview of where we are at the moment. So we have, we are very close to finalizing our intermediate version of the roadmap that will define the required recycling technologies for each of the business cases. We are also looking at the definition of substances that the technologies for the pre-processing will need to will have to control in order to make sure that no hazards are contained in the specific materials for the business cases. We have finished also a first draft of our stakeholder value chain analysis that looks at the issues, but also at the enablers that the current value chain network has for the 5 different business cases. And finally, we also announced our presence in the online media by our website. And also we have 2 social media channels on LinkedIn and Twitter. So you can follow us if you'd like. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gergana. Do we have any questions? Okay, if not, then we could go, thank you, and we could go forward. So next one, we present NONTOX results. And first, Francisco is telling us about A8 sensor. Please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Let me just open the presentation here. Just a moment. Okay, sorry about that. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So I will start now showing some highlights of this active hyperspectral sensor task within the context of the NONTOX project, which is the sensor we applied for detection of brominated flame retardants in waste plastics, mostly from waste electric and electronic waste. So first of all, why using this type of sensor? Well, there are several advantages. So we are talking here about an infrared type of sensor. So it has the properties of being non-invasive, and it can measure the sample by means of probing its surface composition only. So in our case, what distinguishes this sensor is the use of this laser source, which is a super continuous source. It's a laser source that has a broad spectral coverage, and it allows remote sensing. So here's a depiction of how it works in practice. We have here the AHS, which is emitting this laser beam, and then it can scan the sample, and then we get one spectrum per pixel. So each spectrum is a signal that contains a lot of information about the composition, including the plastic, the polymer contents, and also the additives, which case what is interesting for us, the brominated flame retardants. So here's just a picture of the prototype. So we can see here the dimensions, and the way it works is that we can position in this pen and tilt mount, so we can enable the scan. And this is a prototype diagram that I will not go into the details, but just the general idea is that we have here this super continuous source and a wavelength selector device, which is this MEMS Fabry-Perot interferometer developed by VTT. And then the light is guided to the sample, and the reflected light is collected. And this is how we can get the spectrum. So this is an overview of the work developed in NONTOX, aiming at bromine contents classification, so classification of waste plastic according to the bromine content, and also polymer type, which we investigated as well. So we begin with a source of waste plastic from multiple streams, but mainly from WEE. And then from that, we collected individual plastic pieces, so these 98 samples. And then we analyzed them with reference X-ray fluorescence sensor, which is gives our reference for bromine content, and also with a reference hyperspectral camera in the lab, which is a commercial system that works as a reference for the hyperspectral images we get. So from this side, we can get reference for bromine concentration, and from here, we also used a plastic database, so virgin plastics with no polymer compositions to serve as a reference for our classification of polymer type. So here are some results that we got for the classification, and I will begin actually with the lower part here, where we have the results, these histograms obtained from the XRF, where we can see this concentration distribution in the plastics. So one thing we noticed was this gap in concentration, which then guided us to the approach of classification. So we noticed the plastic was mostly either very high bromine concentration, so this is in percentage, and or very low. So we then proceeded to develop a machine learning classifier so that we can use the information, the spectral information, to classify according to some concentration thresholds. And we acquired here this level of classification, which is very high, above 80%, which is still below the laboratory reference, but it's quite high level of accuracy. And we can see how it varies according to the threshold of bromine concentration here. And this is another of the main results, which was the classification according to polymer type. So here we see these two images. So these are matrices of individual plastic pieces, all arranged to be imaged by both the reference hyperspectral camera and our sensor. So we see here they are colored according to the different polymers. So I'm selecting two types of polymer as an example, polyethylene and polystyrene. And we can see the same, more or less the same plastic polymers are being identified in the corresponding pieces. So we can see this similarity between the reference measurements and our own sensor. And more importantly is that our sensor can do this at a much larger distance, so it gets more suitable also for the recycling environment. And this is some results, some summary of results of the field test, because this sensor was also implemented in a actual in a pilot test bed at Swerim in Sweden. And one of the tests that we did here was this validation of the lab, which I'm showing this picture. So we had, this is just a reflectance target for the sensor. This is a pointer to show, like a green pointer to show where the beam is. And we have a sequence of plastic waste pieces here. And these were the pieces that we analyzed in the lab, and they were also analyzed in the conveyor belt. And we can see here some metrics of the classifier that we are acquired. So you see the accuracy is still pretty high, although lower than in the lab, but it's still pretty high. And here is just a comparison of the signal, how it looks like in the field test and in the lab for one plastic piece. And it's also showing that it's similar. So the conclusion that we can apply this sensor to in the actual environment. In addition to that, this is a collaboration with another project where we applied both two sensors. We applied AHS and Raman spectrometer to a much broader set of samples, all sourced in this case from electronic waste. And we applied a robust methodology for fusing the data of both sensors so that we could use the information from these both types of sensors to classify the plastics according to the contents of bromine. Of course, bromine, but in terms of brominated flame retardants. And we showed in this work that we can get actually higher accuracy when we applied both sensors. So this work has been submitted now to a journal, and it's currently under review. So to conclude, we showed high accuracy in classification of plastic containing hazardous brominated flame retardants, in addition to the classification of the polymer content itself. And although the concentration thresholds that we use to classify, they are higher than the levels required by the regulations, the AHS could still be implemented in a screening step where you can use this classification in combination with the polymer identification as well, to separate very high fractions from the lower fractions. And in the outlook, we are developing further this technology now to expand the scope of applications to characterization of other quality parameters of plastic. And in this case, we are, in the case of the Primus project, we are applying it to measure degradation degree in plastics. So thank you very much for your attention. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? If not, we can go further. Thank you, Francisco. And then there are LCA highlights by Filomena. Please.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. This is Filomena Ardolino from University of Campania Luigi Vanvitelli. And together my research group, we worked in the framework of NONTOX Project in the WP6. This WP is mainly oriented to the evaluation of life cycle of environmental performances of strategies proposed in the framework of this project by evaluating environmental, social, and economic aspects. And we used the life cycle perspective to make this evaluation. In particular, we focused on target plastic of interest of this project that are WE, construction demolition waste, and end-of-life vehicles. And we focused on innovative solutions proposed by the project, which are CreaSolv, Extruclean, plastic upgrading, MODIX, and catalytic pyrolysis. But we compared them with conventional treatments and also those substandard, such as burning and dumping. We made this evaluation at process level, and then we developed the same evaluation at management scheme level by taking into account the whole European context. But in particular, we can see some results of these activities. In particular, results can be divided in inventory results that are those related to the quantification of management scheme, but also the input and output from each process. That is an activity useful to quantify burdens related to each process, but also benefits deriving from developing of these strategies. So we can see this, that is the example for WE plastics, where during the activities, doing the inventory activities, we identified the plastic composition of interest by identifying the percentage of each polymer, but also the level of contamination for each of them. And then, based on this composition, we developed some possible current management scheme at the European level, but also the possible future non-tox scheme, by identifying the role of each strategy proposed by non-tox. For example, the target plastic for CreaSolv, target plastic for catalytic pyrolysis, but also plastics that are today already recyclable, because all strategies proposed by CreaSolv are not in competition with mechanical recycling. Anyway, the first crucial results of NONTOX project is that for all target plastic under analysis, we have a strong increase in recovery rates for these plastics, thanks to the introduction of new physical recycling processes, and on the same time we have the strong reduction of plastic waste sent to disposal by means of combustion or landfill. And this is mainly due to the utilization of pyrolysis for all residues from the process. We made the same methodology also for construction and demolition waste plastics and for end-of-life vehicles plastics. And then we studied each process for the quantification of burdens and benefit of each process. And in particular, we identified for CreaSolv, for Extruclean, and for catalytic pyrolysis the key crucial parameters for the quantification of environmental burdens that include, for example, in the case of CreaSolv, the efficiencies, the removal efficiencies, the efficiency in the recovery of new materials, but also the quality of recovered materials. Obviously, we obtained a lot of data and information from our partners, and we used all of these to carry out the evaluation in a life cycle perspective. So we can see our life cycle inventory tables, where we indicated the crucial parameters utilized for the analysis, but also the type of data modeling that we developed, because this work required the identification of those burdens which are strictly process specific and those that are merely waste specific. Then, based on this data, we developed the impact assessment phase. That is the quantification of environmental impacts, including, for example, global warming, but not only. And we developed this stage again before by focusing on single treatments, and then by developing the analysis for the whole European context. So we can see that when we look at the single treatment, we're starting from the worst ones that are open burning and open dumping, and we arrived to the implementation of innovative solutions such as CreaSolv, but also the upgrading and catalytic pyrolysis. And we can see that there is a strong decrease in environmental impacts, starting from a dramatic situation where there are a lot of impacts mainly on human toxicity, and arriving on a situation where the implementation of this new solution bring a lot of environmental advantages, not only for the human toxicity, but also for global warming potential. So, focusing on the innovative solution proposed by NONTOX, we can see that we have two physical recycling processes, CreaSolv and Extruclean, and both of them show some burdens mainly related to the consumption of solvents, of energy, but they lead to strong environmental advantages thanks to the recovery of new of plastic, of secondary plastics. Also take into account the role of the upgrading that, when it is applied, can further improve the quality of recovered material. Then we can see the results for the whole management scheme, and in particular we made a gradual evaluation. We started from an ideal condition where the substandard options are not applied, so where all plastics are sent to sorting for recycling or to thermal treatment based on their characteristics, and we introduced before only CreaSolv, then also upgrading, and finally the whole NONTOX solutions. This in order to understand which processes can be more crucial in the whole management scheme, but also the advantages that can be derived from a gradual implementation of proposed solution. Anyway, if we look to the situation, to the real situation, where also substandard options are applied mainly for those fractions that are exported outside Europe, we can see that the comparison from current and non-TOX scheme is an unfair comparison, because where there are the exported fraction, also in the case that non-TOX is applied, the situation is dramatic, because a large amount of this waste are treated by means of substandard options. Good environmental performances can be seen also in the end-of-life vehicle scheme. Again, this is due mainly to the avoiding of some not useful treatment options, such as the landfill, and then gradually we have a good situation where the Extruclean and CreaSolv are applied, mainly in terms of non-carcinogen categories, but also for global warming. So we developed another type of analysis by focusing on specific polymer in order to have an idea of advantages related to the treatment of single polymers by taking into account their content of brominated or not, because solutions proposed by non-TOX are not in competition with mechanical recycling that can be applied in some cases to non-brominated polymers, and that show very good environmental performances. But when we are brominated polymers, we can consider only new solution to be compared with energy recovery and disposal, and this innovative solution include dissolution and precipitation, and they show good environmental results. We applied the same approach, the same life cycle approach, also for the evaluation of social life cycle aspect. Social life cycle assessment is not so well standardized as environmental one, but we decided to utilize a strong synergy with data already collected in the implementation of the environmental life cycle assessment. We utilized so the same data, the same basic assumptions, such as system boundaries, functional unit, composition for plastics under analysis, and we involved a panel of experts. These experts are inside the consortium, but also outside consortium, non-TOX consortium, in order to have an objective evaluation. And we evaluated their answers by using some reference scale in order to identify if the social performances of each process can be defined very good or very poor. So, using this approach that is suggested by UNEP guidelines, we identified that non-TOX advantages are not only related to the environmental performances, but also to the social performances. So the win-win situations are the same. So the implementation of non-TOX scheme can be advantageous both from environmental and from social point of view. If you would like to have some further information, there are some 4 published papers. They are open access, so you can find all information in these papers, or you can send us an email. We are already available. Thank you.
Thank you, Filomena. Are there any questions? If not, then we can go forward. So it's now we hear about CreaSolv process. Is it Laura presenting or?
Me, Martin.
Martin, okay. Please, Martin.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. And hello to everybody here in the room and outside. Yeah, next talk is about the work of Fraunhofer IBV and our CreaSolv processing in the NONTOX project. We were leading this work package, and this is why I have the pleasure and the honor to present these data. Most of them were produced by Laura, which is highly acknowledged here for doing all that work. Let me shortly start with presenting some results of the characterization of feedstocks, which we did in the beginning of the project, which is mainly done with WEEE plastics. And for you, major learning is that if you divide such feedstocks into density classes, here in blue, densities below 1, in orange, densities between 1 and 1.1, and densities higher than 1.1, here divided into gray and yellow, dividing the area between 1 and 2.5 and higher than 2.5. You see on the one hand first shares of these different fractions in typical SDA, CRT, and LCD fractions coming from small domestic appliances, cathode ray tube, old monitors, and these the neo LCD type monitors. And you see that, of course, there's a bit of PEPP in there. Sorry, this is, of course, my fault. Below 1.1 there we have smaller shares of this one. We have then some shares of the ABS PS in the below 1.1 density fraction, and we have some in the higher fractions. And you see that depending on the fact of the source, it makes sense to go only for these intermediate fractions in the PE, PP, ABS, and PS, which is here in the range blue and orange, which is a nice yield and which is more or less currently state of the art to make use of it. However, if you look into these higher fractions, and these are separated currently at partner recyclers here of NONTOX like Galea, Kurek, or Stena, then you have shares of these ABS, PS, PC, ABS fraction higher than 1.1 and fractions of polymers with densities higher than 1, 2.5. And you see here that the majority is sorry for that one. The majority is here for the gray fraction of the ABS, PS, PC ABS. And the bad news is that this is a fraction which contains bromine. Let me further show you which polymers are expected in such fractions higher than 1.1. And you see that we have shares of PS, of ABS, and also of PC ABS, but they do not make up 100% of this fraction. We also have more or less something between 30 and 50% of other polymers and materials in there. So it is not a very pure fraction, but it may make sense to go for the PC, ABS, and PS from this fraction. However, the bad news is, if you look into the chlorine and in the lower graph and the bromine shares in these fractions, you see that densities between 1 and 2.5 contain really the majority of all bromine of the total sample in only this fraction. So that means whatever we do with this intermediate density fraction, we have to cope with bromine loads, and they come, of course, from brominated flame retardants. But it's not only chlorine. You see that bromine, you also see chlorine loads in exactly this fraction. Then let's go to the what we've done in the NONTOX projects. Here you see what we've done with the WEEE plastics. As mentioned, we focused on the density fraction higher than 1.1, and we aimed to recycled polystyrene, ABS, and PC or PC ABS from these fractions. We did this by using the CreaSolv process, and we had some support by Unisens, a company who do a laser spectroscopic sorting, which helped us to increase a bit the shares of these target fractions in isolated sorting fractions. Come to that later. The basic idea behind this was to produce PC-ABS, SIPs, and ABS in quantities high enough to produce demonstrators later in this project. But this was not the only kind of samples that we characterized and identified as suitable for the project. We also went into electric end-of-life vehicles. Here we had identified fuel tanks and mixed PE-PP fractions. These were not so high in dominated framing tons, so the highest load of, let's say, contaminants were the VOCs in here. This is why we decided to treat them by the Extruclean process. This will be presented in the next talk. And we also looked into cables from construction and demolition waste. These came from PP. These were PP. This material in the end was used by also the Extruclean process, and you see here which end products were identified as suitable demonstrators. This will be later then demonstrated by Carlos. Okay, CreaSolv. CreaSolv is a process where we bring waste in contact with a solvent. The solvent is then capable of physically dissolving the target polymer. It is not a degradation. We just mix solvent and polymer, and the macromolecule is now in a dissolved phase. After that, we can purify from the dissolved polymer all the non-target polymers. They have not dissolved and they can just be filtered off. And we can further purify them from co-dissolved materials like flame retardants, like small particles of fillers and so on. And this is exactly what we've done. Finally, after purification and separation of these residues, we had a drying step. Here the solvent is recovered and reconditioned to be reused in the process. And finally, we got a recovered polymer. Such process is applicable to all thermoplastics, so we could use it for ABS, for PS, and for PC ABS. And we use specific solvents. So, of course, there's a specific solvent for ABS, another one for PS, and also another one for PC ABS. If we do it right, we produce materials free of foreign polymers, free of impurities and harmful substances, and we always target to be, in terms of mechanical properties, competitive to virgin material. When we do this, what we did here in NONTOX, we of course started in lab scale just to have a good choice of parameters and to see how exactly we want to, or we plan to perform dissolution, cleaning, precipitation, and so on. And then the majority of production was done in our small technical scale, which we claim to be a TRL5. Here we produce 5 to 10 kilos a day using stainless steel equipment with 100 to 250 liter vessels, and all of them, of course, connected. It is not only vessels, it's pumps, it's filters, and so on. Very specific plant only for our CreaSolv processing. Let's have a short look into the results. First of all, the good news is here looking into the ABS recycled materials. The XRF analysis of bromine and chlorine in feedstocks and the recycled material clearly indicate we are able to reduce chlorine and bromine significantly. If we have a specific BFR analysis, bromine flame retardant analysis, we see that the majority, or the main flame retardants in such fractions, TBBPA, TBPE, and DKBDE, are also highly significantly reduced. Furthermore, if we look into some other data like the melting point, or the glass transition point, and the melt flow rate, we see typical values for ABS or recycled ABS. Here you see the color, which is probably a bit disappointing in terms of not being clear and white, but this is a typical color coming out of such recycling processes, and it is a color which can be reused and can be recolored at least into darker applications. Same is true for polystyrene. Again, here bromine and chlorine levels. So you see the input and the output. You see again that specific BFR analysis clearly indicates that the substances of concern are significantly reduced and below any levels of concern. Again, glass transition is in the typical range, and the MFR is also in a good range, indicating that the material has not degraded and can be reused. Color-wise, the same is valid as before. What I probably missed to indicate, this one here was the ABS recycled material was foreseen for 3D printing applications. Since here we wanted to show how pure and fine the material is, since 3D printing, as you know, requires filament production, and here any particles in there really cause troubles. The polystyrene HIPS was intended to be used for thermoforming, and we intended to go into fridge liners. This is exactly what Carlos will talk about later. And finally, let's go to the polycarbonate fractions. Here I skip the ABS, PC ABS story, since here we had many different results. And some of the drawbacks of these results were just related to having not a clear mixture of PC and ABS. And this is why, in the end, we decided to do the final production in a way that we only produce a purified polycarbonate with the highest value from our perspective right now. Here you see the preliminary results, since you see here the production will be finalized this month. However, we have the analytical data so far, and we indicate the MFR, which is in a good range. We indicate, again, very low BFR analysis, and we see that we do not have any degradation compared to the virgin PC. And again, we also see a clear reduction of bromine and chlorine, and even of the phosphorus, by using this technology. Phosphorus is here an indicator for phosphor-based flame retardants, which sometimes cause some issues in recycling due to related acids production. This is why we considered here to reduce these levels. And you see the rate of reduction was not as high as usual, since we didn't go too deep into extraction, since we evaluated the resulting or residues of bromine, chlorine, and phosphorus below 200 ppm as sufficiently clean. Okay, outcomes. To sum up very shortly, we could show that it's possible to separate ABS, PS, and PC ABS from plastic mixers into its single components. We could process these and isolate these plastics out of WEEE, ELV, and C and DV waste fractions. We found out that it's useful to have a spectroscopic pre-treatment, which allows us to increase the target polymer in feedstocks for the CreaSolv process to levels of greater than 70%. So sometimes we were even in the range of higher than 90 or 95%, but this is not necessary. We like to have at least a bit higher target polymer concentrations. This is why we set this 70% target here. the spectroscopic sorting is better than 70%, but this is what we have as a, let's say, minimum request to be more efficient in our processing. If we look into the hazard substance reduction, we at least reached a level of 98%. If it's only 98%, mostly we had issues with detection limits in the recycled materials. So we claim that it's higher than 98 and guess it's even higher than 99. If we look into the legacy additives in the recycled materials, they were all below the legal thresholds, the current one and the new ones. Reduction of volatile components was also investigated with our CreaSolv materials. And here we could see it is clearly feasible to reduce them. In the end, we treated more than 300 kilos of plastic waste in our trials, which is with the small technical line really much of effort, and we could produce and deliver nearly 100 kilograms of recycled materials to our partners. This was quite an effort, and we are quite proud of doing this, but it's of course not good enough for the industry. And this is why we have now the pleasure to announce that there will be a future larger scale of work. So in the backyard of our institute, we have now installed a new demonstrator line, which is then feasible to prove a TRL of 5 to 6. You see here it is a 2-floor equipment, 100 square meters, explosion-proof area, modern equipment. We have an external process control in the room beside that plant. The production capacity will be in the range of 50 kilograms per day, just because we are not operating 24/7. We are in the commissioning phase, and we plan to be ready for a routine research operation in 2023, probably not in January, but hopefully in April. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you very much. And because of the scheduling issues, we take all the questions during roundtable. And now we move to other conversion projects. Extruclean. Please, Vicent.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending this dissemination event. My name is Vicent Martinez, researcher in AIMPLAS Plastic Technology Center. Let me just start my presentation with just one slide in order to frame our motivation in the project. As you might know, the European Commission released in early 2018 the European Strategy for Plastics in a Circular Economy in order to address the main problems related to plastic production, consumption, disposal, reuse, and recycling. The challenges are quite ambitious, and among other objectives in this new strategy, there are the position for Europe leadership in sorting and recycling equipment and technologies. Also, by 2030 is expected to increase fourfold the sorting and recycling capacity in the European Union since the 2015 levels. And also, a main objective is to establish a market for recycled plastics with clear growth perspective as more products incorporate plastic recycled content. So in this line, the initiative Circular Plastics Alliance targets the reuse of 10 million tons of recycled plastics by 2025. This means that we need to assure a reliable supply of high-quality plastic recyclate in order to be reused in high added value products. So our approach within NONTOX project is to go a step further in the conventional mechanical recycling process, developing an innovative continuous extrusion tandem recycling technology that combines the injection of supercritical CO2 plus vacuum degassing. This is an schematic view of our process, as we call it the tandem single screw extrusion system, in which in the first extruder we inject gas CO2 in supercritical conditions as a stripping agent to extract volatile organic compounds, and also helps to reduce melt viscosity, providing a more gentle processing in order to avoid thermal stress and degradation. Also, it is possible to place a filtering system between the two extruders in order to remove contaminant particles. And in the second extruder, we provide extended residence time in order to solubilize these volatile and contaminant substances. And at the end, the gas import allows the removal of volatile substances. And this is how this Extruclean tandem recycling technology looks like as we set up in AIMPLAS pilot plant facilities. So in the next slide, I'm going to show you as an example different plastic waste streams that we have already reprocessed by means of this technology, starting with end-life vehicles plastic fuel tanks. First of all, we proceed the pretreatment in different stages in order to red to green, reduce the particle of these whole parts that are quite dirty, so that we also perform different washing steps in order to eventually obtain these polyethylene pretreated granulates that are fitted in Extruclean reprocessing technology. So at the end, we were able to obtain polyethylene recyclate pellets with a very low box content and also free of disturbing odors. Another type of waste from end-life vehicles consisted in this mixed waste stream that is diverted from the vehicles disassembling centers. So in this case, as a pretreatment, we propose a triboelectric sorting technology that rely on the different electrostatic charge capacity of the materials in order to get rid of the wood fraction that is heavily presented in this type of mixed waste in order to separate the mixed plastic fraction. We perform additional stage consisting in melt filtration and stabilization of this plastic fraction prior to reprocessing in Extruclean process. So also at the end, we were able to obtain polypropylene recyclates with lower box content. Another type of waste consisted in construction and demolition polypropylene pipes. So in the same way, we proceed in the treatment stages, consisting mainly in the grinding and sorting of different types of polypropylene pipes waste according to color and composition. So also performing the Extruclean reprocessing, we were able to obtain, in this case, polypropylene recyclate pellets with low box content. And also the latest case study rely in the ABS plastic from waste electric and electronic equipment. So that in this case, there was a quite a wide variety of different electric and electronic apparels that were undergo a grinding and sorting process in order to obtain this particle size, this lower particle size, suitable for upcycling melt filtration and stabilization, and eventually the Extruclean reprocessing. So also at the end, we were able to obtain this type of ABS recyclate pellets that were reused for a filament extrusion to be used in the 3D printing process. So in this case, we take advantage of the low box content of these ABS recyclates in order to avoid nozzle nozzle clogging in the 3D printers. So that, as a main outcomes of our upgrading extrusion recycling process, we were able to assess that the Extruclean process that combines the supercritical CO2 injection plus vacuum degassing allows a considerable reduction in the total box content for all the samples reprocessed, and also contribute to drastically reduce the disturbing odors and smells that are typical in the plastic recyclates. So that, for example, in the case of the end-of-life vehicles mixed plastic fraction, the COPS reduction were up to 95%. In the case of construction and demolition waste pipes, the reduction in COPS total content were up to 82%. And also in the case of ABS from electric and electronic waste, the total COPS reduction reached up to 80%, allowing to the obtain of high quality recyclage to be reduced in high added value applications. So this is all from my side. So,
Thank you very much. And now we could have the coffee break and okay, take the questions during roundtable. Let's have the 10 minutes coffee break. So we'll start, what's the time there? 10:45.
I think we can start again.
Okay, great. So next one, we will hear about thermal valorization by Patricia. Please, Patricia.
Hello, good morning to everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen. Just a moment. Can you see the slides?
Yes. Yes.
But I have to
Yes.
change the configuration, I think.
Yes, the slideshow, please. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Now it's better, right? It's still, no, it's better now.
Hmm.
Okay, then just good morning to everybody. I'm going to present our activities in the project regarding the thermochemical valorization of plastic wastes. This was a work performed in collaboration between IMDEA Energy and VTT. And just to explain the visitors of this meeting, the objectives of this work package, what it was to carry out the thermochemical conversion of those polymers that could not be recycled by means of the two main routes, Extruclean or CreaSolv, and even those side byproducts that are created during these treatments also will be converted by means of these thermochemical valorization routes. This route mainly consists on the catalytic pyrolysis, which is just the decomposition in the absence of oxygen of the plastics. So three fractions are generated, just a solid material, a carbonaceous material called char, a liquid product that is condensed after the reaction and is called the oil, and finally some gases. The main product for us is the oil because it contains very promising compounds that can be used as fuels or as chemicals, but they need to be further upgraded by means of hydrodealogenation treatments in order to remove the halogens that are typically present in the plastic wastes. The objectives that were proposed in this work package were to have a high liquid fraction yields, above 50 weight% regarding the initial feedstock. Halogen contents low enough in order to be marketable, this oil, and using catalysts that are not very expensive, that are competitive. Finally, also, the objective was to recover as much as possible these halogens in order to allow the landfilling of the charred residues, for example, or to sell these compounds in the market. Explaining the procedure, we received many feedstocks, many plastics from the partners of the consortium. We received more than 20 samples, real plastic wastes coming from the different sources, and even from the CreaSolv treatments. And we carry out the full characterization of all these materials by different techniques. So we could determine the composition of these samples. At the end, we selected all these plastic wastes that are in the table among the 20 samples that we received at the beginning. You can see that they had a very heterogeneous and complex compositions in many cases, and with a variable content of ash and halogens. That are the challenges in this process in order to achieve valuable compounds. So what's the approach that we applied in order to valorize these residues? As I mentioned before, we should apply catalytic pyrolysis and HDA, hydrodealogenation treatments, but this was performed in following a step method. First, we carry out reactions in batch conditions in order to optimize the reaction conditions, to screen the different feedstocks and catalysts, even to explore the possibility of carrying out some pretreatments. Then, after some of these conditions and feedstocks were selected, we moved to operate in a continuous mode, screening a selected number of catalysts, and also evaluating the possibility of regenerate the catalyst. And once all these points were determined, then we moved to a final step in which we tried to couple, both catalytic pyrolysis and HDH reactions in order to evaluate what is the final product, this oil, the content of the halogens in the oils, and the composition in terms of the content of the valuable compounds. Just starting with the first step, this is the summary of the results that we achieved. First, for example, with a sample as this one, a raw material from electronic wastes with a very complex composition and even having some ash, we determined that applying a first washing with water, we could remove an important amount of chlorine, not in the case of bromine, because bromine is in the form of organic compounds and it is not soluble in water. But in the case of chlorine, some of this chlorine is in the form of salts and can be removed by this washing treatment. Then applied first thermal pyrolysis, the decomposition at high temperatures, around 550 Celsius degree, but without catalyst. And we found that the oil that we obtained has a much lower concentration of halogens, as you can see here, in the case of chlorine on the left and bromine on the right. Applying a catalyst, which is called catalytic pyrolysis, just introducing a catalyst in the reaction system, we can reduce even more the concentration of these halogens in the oil. So we are improving the quality of the oil, reaching the values that you can see here. And finally, we applied HDA treatment to this upgraded oil. Then with an appropriate catalyst and proper reaction conditions, we are even able to reach zero concentrations in bromine, as you can see here, and concentrations of chlorine in many cases below 10 ppm. Another important thing is that we were analyzing the compositions of all these oils, and we found that the oils could be used not only as fuels, as high quality fuels, but also as pools of very interesting chemicals for the market, such as styrene, monoaromatics in quite high concentrations. So this was the first step. We selected the most promising catalyst, and then we moved to the next step, in which we evaluated the catalysts and the feedstocks in a continuous mode in order to approach to a more relevant conditions, to conditions closer to a real plant. And then here you can see the results regarding the catalytic pyrolysis step, where we were evaluating different catalysts, two based on calcium oxide and the other two with iron oxides. And in these cases, we found that using iron oxide supported onto a zeolite, we were able to reach quite stable activities, at least during these 4 hours of the reaction, and with quite low halogen concentrations in the oil, with very high quality. And the oil yield was hardly affected. It was not penalized. The same was carried out for the HDA reaction. We evaluated different catalysts, two catalysts, nickel supported onto silica and onto activated carbon, and during 6 hours. And in this case, it was the nickel supported on activated carbon, the one exhibiting the best performance in terms of stability during the reaction and in terms of halogen contents, which was very low, below 20 and even 10 ppm in the oil. And then once this was verified, we coupled both treatments in 2 configurations, direct and indirect tandem systems. In the indirect system, we just performed catalytic pyrolysis in this reaction on the left. We place the catalyst here, we get the oil, and then the oil was fed into another reactor operating at higher pressure, 5 bars in nitrogen, where the HDA catalyst was placed. The direct configuration is a bit different. In the first reaction, there is no catalyst, just thermal degradation, and then on the right, we place the two catalysts. In the up part, there is the catalytic pyrolysis catalyst, and on the down part is the HDA catalyst. The results were quite good in both cases, but we can say that in the case of the indirect configuration, which is the light green color, it is a bit better in terms of the halogen contents, which are very low, below, again, 10 ppm in many cases, and with higher stability. Also, we explore the distribution of the halogens in the different fractions, because this is a quite important issue for the viability of this process. And we found that both halogens, chlorine and bromine, were especially accumulated in the char. In the case of chlorine, there is also an important fraction on the aqueous solutions that we employed for the washing of the plastic wastes. But there was just an important thing, a very, very low amount of chlorine in the other fractions. Just as conclusions, then we can claim that we have obtained valuable compounds in the oils in relatively high concentrations. Also, the plastic waste washing is effective in reducing the chlorine content. The tandem reactions coupling catalytic pyrolysis and HDA is very promising, because it reduces quite a lot the content of halogens in the oil. We're having very, very high quality. The catalyst can be regenerated and keeping most of the initial activity. And finally, regarding the halogen distribution, most of these halogens are accumulated in the char and can be extracted by water washing. So, and these aqueous solutions containing halogen salts could be used for the formulation of solutions for polymer separation. And this is a very fast summary. Thanks at all for your attention.
Thank you, Patricia. And now we can take the questions during roundtable. Next one would be VP4 demonstrator by Carlos. Please, Carlos.
Yes, good morning to everyone. Let me put this in presentation mode. So my name is Carlos, and I was leading the work package dealing with the upgrading of plastics and demonstration. Just wanted to give a brief introduction on what we were doing, and finally going into actually demonstration cases. It will be quite complicated to come to a systematic description of highlights of all the demonstration activities. We will just manage to browse the demonstration cases, but I emphasize that it's important that if you are interested in some of these cases, take contact with us. We will leave the contact information in the latest slides here. So maybe here is worth to say that in addition to CreaSolv and Extruclean, we were also considering a third approach, that was the simultaneous foaming. That was a work that was focused on EPS, and the idea was resulting in nanocellular foam in the same process where the material was being decontaminated. We got quite interesting results. From Extruclean, we were dealing with polypropylene and polyethylene, as well as ABS, PP from open loop, ABS open loop, PE from fuel tanks. When it comes to CreaSolv, as Martin pointed out quite well, we were dealing with the HIPS, ABS, and polycarbonate. We will see in each of the demonstration cases where these materials were used and where the challenges were found. The focus here was addressing sustainable concepts, but also addressing the topic of performance. Definitely, we wanted to use recyclates. We strived also to develop this concept on simultaneous purification and conversion. The food contact component from non-food contact recyclates was also a topic here. And the demonstration of this circularity enabled by CreaSolv from open loop recycling for polycarbonate was also a key activity. When it comes on to design for recycling, we focus on the design to fit the open loop sorting by density, mainly on polyolefins and styrenics, also with main focus on monomaterials. So let's take a round through the different cases. It was quite extensive, this work. In most of the cases, we came down to formulate compositions and validate them for small-scale processing on really diverse types of processing, injection molding, extrusion, thermoforming, 3D printing, rotomolding, pressure forming. As I said, let's take some of the cases and still have the time to discuss a little bit. The first one was this material where PCABS was developed towards achieving machine cover. This was a material recovered by CreaSolv, both ABS and polycarbonate, and the upgrading was mainly in the direction of impact modification and stabilizers. Here, versions of half CreaSolv with content of polycarbonate and full PC and ABS CreaSolv were developed with quite good results, with some limitations when it comes to color. That was an attempt to come to this refrigerator liner, where the idea was developing laminates for food contact on one side with virgin material, having a functional barrier layer, and HIPS PCR from CreaSolv on the other side. We managed to come to the extrusion of these asymmetric laminates, coming to a good conclusion on the good processability of HIPS PCR, even in this asymmetric application. The focus for the upgrading was, again, impact modifiers. And as I mentioned, the material was HIPS from CreaSolv. The other demonstration case was on 3D printing filaments, where the 3D printing filament extrusion was done first, and then the materials were evaluated in 3D printing. Here it was the focus ABS, both from mechanical recycling, devolatilized by CreaSolv, and also ABS from CreaSolv and ABS from mechanical recycling devolatilized by Extruclean. In the case of CreaSolv, the material was used as recovered, while the Extruclean ABS was necessary the melt filtration and compatibilization. Here, the main topic was the clogging of the nozzles in the 3D printer that was quite tricky. This other demonstrator was on the use of laminates of polyethylene from recycled tanks devolatilized by Extruclean that were reinforced by ultra-high molecular weight PE mats. This other, it was the purified nanocellular foam that it was quite successful, taking EPS from construction and demolition waste. The material was upgraded with stabilizers, nucleating agents, and by a multi-cycle process in batch autoclave, it was possible to come to these nanocellular structures where the content of bromine was taken from 5,000 ppm down to levels close to 400, where it was really not possible to remove further. We believe it was by the presence of these polymeric brominated flame retardants that were really not possible to remove. But then it was proven that it's possible to perform the two operations in one single reactor. The last two ones are about those that really came to TRL6. The target here was a vacuum cleaner base based on polypropylene from WEEE that was devolatilized by Extruclean. The upgrading was towards improving the stiffness, the impact, and still remaining inside the density 1 to fit the sorting by density. It was a quite interesting activity where we managed to come to develop a material that was pretty close to the virgin polymer with an 85% recycled content, and one with enhanced impact with a really high value of Sharpie, but still compromising the stiffness. Here it was really missing even more powerful fillers to enhance the stiffness, and that could be still complying with the topic of design for recycling. This other one was about using polypropylene from WEEE, again, devolatilized by Extruclean. And here we are really proud to share a breakthrough in using this material for rotomolding, enabling this step by some processing aids in a package that was especially developed here, where the sintering was enabled by these additive packages. We successfully advanced in the production of tanks and did some steps towards the validation in the direction of fuel tanks. But in general, the material was proven to be suitable for general purpose rotomolding. I want to finish here with a couple of remarks. First of all, we took materials from the three streams of interest that were purified by Extruclean, CreaSolv, and the simultaneous purification and foaming. And the demonstration was done from TRL 3 to 6 for different polymers and a really broad range of processing techniques. It was possible to develop technical products with acceptable aesthetics from these streams, and even without the need of purification. Directions for further work. The topic of color is still there. The gray tones that have some problems to come to a really nice black. The balance of stiffness impact hampered by the lack of high efficiency fillers that could not result in topics on in the detriment for recyclability. The material design for food contact, it's still an open issue and will be again hampered by changes in the applicable regulations that are coming now into force. Material from ELV recyclates. Definitely, it's a potential there, in particular for polyolefins, and it remains to see if it's something on styrenics or polyamides. On construction and demolition, definitely polyolefins are there, same as vinyl polymers, and efforts need to be put to improve those recyclability rates. The inter and intra-batch homogeneity of recyclates is still an open issue. And here, the topic is really going beyond the rheological control, as the rheology is really not proportional to all the key properties of the polymer. And it was also clear that that the mapping of certain impurities that are in the streams that hamper the processing of recyclates is a fact. In particular, halogen-free flame retardants, phosphorus-based, that have an acid value that could be problematic for upgrading. It will be in the webpage some other materials, like the dissemination workshop that was done in May, as well as the material from the final consortium meeting, where more details about these demonstration cases will be shared. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to take contact with the responsible of the different demonstration cases. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos.
So I'm Isabel, the Schrijver from Centexbel, and I would be very pleased to present you today the CREATOR project. What is CREATOR doing, especially? So the CREATOR project is, oh, my slides are moving automatically. Let me just see if I can shift this off. Just give me 1 second, because otherwise my story will be a little bit too fast. Voila, I hope this going to work. I will reshare my presentation. Voila. Okay. So the CREATOR project has been set up, as you will see here, to collect, purify, and especially to reuse. So we would like to be in line with the currently Circular Plastic Alliance, and to make sure that more plastics could be reused and could be reused by our industry in a safe way. And that's very important, to reuse in a safe way. And that would mean that also the purification and in a good way collecting of those materials is very important. So what does CREATOR do? We are focusing on 3 very important steps. So the first step is focusing on how to collect our different waste streams, because it all starts with this important step, and to identify those and then to sort them into the right secondary raw material streams. Second step, and a little bit in line with what Esther has also been explaining in the previously presentations, we want to make sure and purify those materials, want to make sure that they are REACH compliant, and very specific in the CREATOR project, we are focusing on brominated flame retardants. And we are developing a method to remove the non-compliant brominated flame retardant out of the materials and replace them with currently safe to use flame retardant materials. So the last step, of course, the safe reuse is very important, and we are demonstrating the reuse of those secondary raw materials in different end applications. So as the process, how we are going to, so the first step I already explained, collecting. Second step, identification and separation of the polymer parts. Then we are developing a We call it an extractive extrusion process for the removal of those brominated flame retardants. I will come back into more details explaining you the process. Of course, then the next step is labeling that we are brominated free polymer materials. And last step is to reuse those materials into new applications, which are, of course, the waste streams we are starting with. So we try to do a full market integration and to have different steps over the full supply chains. So when you look at the waste streams we are starting from, we identified through 3 different waste streams. So the first waste stream is coming from construction and demolition waste. This is mainly polystyrene coming from isolation materials. Isolation materials that still contains a high amount of HBCD flame retardants, which it's not allowed anymore under the REACH legislation. So this already has a very high problem when reusing those materials. Second waste streams we are considering is waste streams coming from electronical and electrical waste streams. So this is also ABS polystyrene waste streams. So the household white waste streams, so coming from fridge, from electrical equipment, is being considered. And the third waste streams is coming from aeronautic industry, which is a mix of different waste streams. We are working together with the recycling companies that are doing the full characterization of the material, going up till the sorting, and then hopefully also finally in the future the removal of the hazardous components. And then we are going to different end users where the automotive industry is a very important one, which are reusing the materials into their newly developed products. Let's come now a little bit more on the innovation part of the CREATOR project. What are we doing? We are trying to develop a new and cost-effective approach. First of all, very important for us to be cost-effective is that you should consider the whole supply chains, and we focus now on the 3 most important polymer streams: ABS, polystyrene, and polycarbonate. This is due to the 3 different waste streams we are considering, and this is why we selected on those 3 polymers. And then, of course, the aim is to work on the kilogram scale, on characterization, sorting of large amount of materials, and the removal of the brominated flame retardants. So we should be below the 0.1 weight percent in a continuous scale on kilograms. Why the 0.1 weight percent? Because this is, of course, the REACH legislation limit for those materials. What are we doing? First of all, as I mentioned, first important step, going a little bit more into detail, is on the identification and the purification and the sorting step. And therefore, we set up a LIPS system, so a laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy, in which we were able to identify the brominated content of the flame retardants up to 1000 ppms by using this LIPS sorting system, and able to sort, okay, this is a waste stream that does contain the brominated flame retardant and should need to go to the purification step, and the other waste streams can directly go into the mechanical recycling. For the purification, once we have identified that the materials is containing brominated flame retardant, we started up, and this is a picture you see on your left, on a lab scale purification system, where we are using a combination of supercritical CO2 and NADES solvent, as they say, green solvent, to extract the brominated flame retardant out of the materials. So we worked with different extraction setups, working with different solvents, different pressures and temperatures. And as you can see, finally, we reached up a removal of around, on a batch reaction, about 95% of the brominated flame retardant could be removed out of the different waste streams. Next step, since this is of course a batch reaction, and this is the picture you see on the right, is shifting to a continuously extraction method, and therefore we are using a twin screw compounder. And the twin screw compounder, we add in a twin screw compounder again the supercritical CO2 and our co-solvents. And as you can see there, we don't reach the same extraction efficiency because the time, of course, in an extruded is much shorter than in a batch reactor. So at this moment, extraction efficiencies up to 50% could be obtained. So for certain materials, this is sufficient to be below the 0.18% REACH legislation limit. For other materials, further optimizations would be needed, and potentially a second step of extrusion will be applied to be below the limits. Of course, after the purification of the materials, next step was the reuse. And very specific in this project, there was a lot of interest from the end users to use 3D printing. So we developed a 3D print filament. Also, and that's the second picture you can see here. This is an automotive interior panel that was being developed. So different parts are being produced. And also we worked on an insulation panel. The 3 different demonstrators were being produced without the flame retardants, and depending on the application, potentially new environmentally friendly flame retardants were being added, showing the same burning behavior as what we have seen with before added HBCD flame retardants. So we could prove that similar properties could be obtained after purification of those recycled materials and after adding some new environmentally friendly flame retardants, so we could obtain similar properties as the materials before recycling. So I think this is a very nice result of being purification materials, REACH compliant recycled materials that could be used. Of course, we are also doing some technical impact studies. So we developed a system for the precise separation. We developed a method for the removal. Also very important here to mention for the removal of the legacy additives is that a lot of work has been set up in the identification procedure, because we noticed that for recycled materials, currently there are no methods available to identify those materials. So a lot of work has been put in a protocol to really make sure that the materials are containing or not containing those legacy additives. So we hope with developing this technical aspect, we could increase the recycle rate. We have proven that the materials are reusable, that good properties can be obtained. So we hope in the future those materials are not going to incineration anymore and could be recycled. So by doing this, we would hope to be independent from the petroleum sources in Europe, to have more circular models for plastics, and to offer some methods to have a wider range of plastics that could be reused, and to really shift to recycled plastics towards a safe secondary raw material source that could be used. We are therefore working with a full bench of partners. You can see we split them up here in 3 groups. Of course, first important group have everything to do with the recycling, and this would means the sorting, the purifications, and the identification of the different materials. So we were working with not only the technical partners, but also with very important industrial partners to scale up those processes. We have different partners reusing those materials, as I already demonstrated, in 3D printing, in automotive and installation parts. And then we have partners working on the LCA dissemination and the legal departments. So I hope with this I could give you a very first glimpse on the project. Of course, more information can be found on our website. Fraunhofer ICT is coordinating this proposal, but as Irma was not available today, I'm glad I could represent this project here to you all. And if you have further questions, don't hesitate to either contact me or contact the coordinator or have a look at our website. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to receive your further questions.
Thank you very much, Isabel. Now we have the roundtable, so we can ask questions from other consortiums or raise up questions of issues we should solve in the future, etc. Malin from Viteri promised to have a brief introduction to this roundtable. Please, Malin.
Maybe you can hear me now. Okay, sorry. Yes? No? Good. And I have to use the correct computer because I have my notes on. Okay, here we are. So I'm just briefly going to talk about what we have found in the NONTOX project as the key hinders for the circular economy of plastics in Europe. We have done a study about the key hinders, bottlenecks, and then also come up with a set of recommendations. I won't be going into the recommendations today because, you can find that in the results of our study, and that's what we are here to talk about. But a bit of the hinders that we have identified, and then we will continue with the other projects and discuss if your experiences are somewhat similar. And then we also go forward to the questions regarding the technical results of the presentations that we have seen today. So in the NONTOX project, we have found that the key challenges for increasing circularity in the plastics sector is different aspects that can be linked to legislation, technologies, and costs. And these are, of course, very much interlinked with each other. To improve the recyclability of the plastic waste and also to increase the use of recyclates in manufacture, we have done interviews and workshops to find these results. And in this work, we saw that the key focus that our stakeholders focused on was legislation. So we need to do some policy shifts to improve the plastic circularity. But not only that, it was of course also acknowledged that technology is the key. We need to have better technologies available both for sorting and also then for processing. So technologies need to support the transition, but policies need to require this transition. Regarding hinders in processing, we saw that as the recyclates generally cannot have the same material properties as virgin materials, this was mainly related to that recyclates tend to have less of a stable quality, and virgin materials have well-documented material properties, and the converters know exactly how they will behave and what they contain, and they highly appreciate this fact that there is technical data available for the virgin materials, and the fact that there isn't technical data available for recyclates was seen as a major obstacle for using recyclates. One other thing that was very much highlighted was the lack of continuity in supply. So the recyclates don't have a constant quality. They're not constantly available. So converters found that to be very challenging. When you have variances in your feedstock quality, this results in variances in your product quality, and this is definitely not accepted by customers. Therefore, converters prefer not to use variances in feedstock quality, that is recyclates. But it's not only about the quality variation, it's always also the problem that the recyclates may contain other materials. So there can be found foreign materials in the recyclates, which then is a very big problem for the molding processes. Regarding the bottlenecks in technology, so this was the processing of in the recycling or in the using of secondary materials. Now we talk about recycling technologies. We have two big things. One is that mechanical recycling causes the polymer quality to degrade. So we need to have either virgin plastics or virgin quality plastics fed into the plastic stock to keep the quality of the recyclates or the plastic stock as high enough. And then we also have some sectors that cannot use other than virgin quality plastics. But when we talk about virgin quality, we don't have to talk about virgin plastics. We can also talk about other recycling technologies, such as chemical recycling, where we then produce monomers that we can polymerize. That was when everybody found out that I'm not a plastic expert. And so the problem, or that is one of the things we need to address. And then also the fact that we have a lot of mixed plastic waste streams. So we need better sorting technologies. Today, recycling technologies need a homogeneous feedstock for recycling. So we need to have better sorting and sorting technologies, identification technologies, able to sort the mixed feedstocks, so that we can also feed these mixed feedstock into the recycling processes. Related to costs, the big problems is that secondary raw materials with high quality can be as expensive as virgin. They can be more expensive, but it still creates some additional costs when using the secondary raw materials. You have to do new casting molds and redo some of your processes to use the recyclates. So they increase the costs even if you have a very good grade recyclate. What was highlighted a lot during the interviews we had is that virgin plastics fluctuate according to the prices of oils, whereas secondary plastics should not do this because we have a stable processing cost. However, still secondary plastics fluctuate according to the price of virgin plastics because they prefer to do this. And from a sourcing perspective, this is very negative. A stable price is always better when you talk about sourcing. So this was very much questioned by sourcing experts, that why do you have fluctuating prices when they could be stable? Regarding the legislative hinders, it's not a lot we can do as the scientific community other than provide information to the policymakers. What we found in our interviews and stakeholder engagement was that there is still too much policy focus on waste management, on recycling targets, and not enough on the other side of the sector of the material use, on the product design, and so forth. And this is somewhat preventing the circularity in the sector when all focus is on waste and recycling and not so much on the market pull on the other side. We talked a lot in the interviews also about the decision making in the value chain. I'm going to try to be a bit more brief now. It seemed to us that it's very scattered and the different parties more or less blame each other why nothing is happening. But we found that it's not as easy as you would have thought when being an outsider. Decisions are being made quite high in the companies and a bit too late also. So it's not the same people who are responsible for sourcing, quality guarantees, and so forth that are making sustainability decisions. Also, sustainability and circular economy is not the same thing, and sustainability is the key focus of most companies, and the use of recyclates can have a negative impact on, for example, product longevity, and product longevity is a higher ranked circular economy action than recycling. So it's well understood that sustainability is a higher target than recycling, the use of recyclates and so forth. The role of converters, we discussed and argued back and forth. What we as outsiders could then finally conclude was that although some stakeholders think that the converters are the key bottlenecks in this transition, it's not maybe the whole truth. The truth is that small and large players have different positions. When a large player wants to have, like a brand owner, wants to use recyclates, they will get their recyclates. That's no problem. The smaller players might have a bit more problems and have to follow the wishes or rules of the converters, but it's not a yes or no question. It's dependent on if you are a small or a large player. That's some thoughts on how to move forward or do the transition to a circular economy. What is hindering us today? It's very complex, very much more than what I could briefly talk about here today. We have a deliverable on this that is going to be published on the NONTOX site, but Anja has some questions for the roundtable discussion. So Anja, can you share your screen?
Yeah, and first of all, thank you, Malin. This was excellent. Thank